Previously, Malik was forced to choose who would die. Phase 2 has begun. Malik's heart pounded against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden, deafening silence of his apartment. He stared down at the phone, its screen glowing with an eerie, otherworldly light. The words seemed to burn into his retinas. Phase 2 active. "What is Phase 2? He whispered, the words barely audible, swallowed by the fear constricting his throat. He'd barely survived Phase 1. The choices, the impossible decisions, they were etched into his soul like scars. He had hoped, prayed, that it was over, that the nightmare had finally ended. But this message, these two simple words, told him the horror was just beginning. He thought back to the last choice, the one that broke him. He saw their faces, the one who lived and the one who didn't, a ghostly slideshow playing behind his eyes. He had made a choice, and now he had to live with it. But what came next? What could possibly be worse than what he'd already endured? As if in answer, the phone vibrated violently in his hand, a jarring, physical shock that pulled him back to the present. New text crawled across the screen, each word a hammer blow to his crumbling composure. "Observation is over." Malik's breath hitched. Observation. Had this all been some kind of sick test? A game where he was just a pawn being watched from afar? The thought sent a fresh wave of nausea through him. He had felt so central to the chaos, so responsible for the outcomes. But if he was just being observed, who was the observer? And what did they want from him? The questions swirled in his mind, a chaotic vortex of dread and confusion. He felt small, insignificant, a lab rat in a maze designed by a malevolent god. Who was pulling the strings? The anonymity of his tormentor was almost as terrifying as the acts themselves. Before he could even process the implication, another message appeared, the final nail in the coffin of his hope. Participation begins. Participation. The word hung in the air, heavy with unspoken threats. If Phase 1 was observation, a passive role in a deadly drama, then Phase 2. Phase 2 meant he was no longer just a spectator. He was being pulled onto the stage. He was no longer just making choices from a distance. He was now an active player in the game. What did that mean? Would he have to get his hands dirty? Would he have to face his victims, or worse, his creators? The possibilities were endless, and every single one was terrifying. The line between observer and participant had just been erased, and he was standing on the wrong side of it. As sudden movement outside his window snatched his attention, Malik's head snapped up, his eyes darting to the street below. His blood ran cold. Parked directly in front of his building, where no car had been moments before, was a sleek, black sedan. It was featureless, its windows tinted so dark they looked like voids, reflecting the gray sky like polished obsidian. It just sat there, silent and menacing, an omen of what was to come. It wasn't just a car, it was a statement. A declaration. We are here. We see you. And we are waiting. He couldn't breathe. His gaze was locked on the vehicle, every instinct screaming at him to run, to hide. But where could he go? The phone in his hand was a leash, and its master was now right outside his door. He was trapped. The world outside his window, once a familiar and safe space, had transformed into a hostile, unknown territory. The car was like a shark circling in the water, a predator that had finally revealed itself. Then, with a slow, deliberate click that seemed to echo in the stillness of his apartment, the rear door of the black car swung open. An invitation, or a summons, dark, gaping opening, promising answers and delivering only more questions. Who was inside? What did they want? He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that stepping into that car meant leaving his old life behind forever. The choice wasn't his to make anymore. Participation had begun. What happens when Malik gets in the car? Who is waiting for him? Find out in the next episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what comes next. Thanks for watching.